guys, it's Loud Guys. Today we are going to watch why Trump won. So we know there are a lot of reasons because of why Trump won, and we saw also reasons why Kamala Harris lost. But one thing is for sure that okay, there are a lot of divided opinions. Everybody is saying like okay, some people are saying that okay, he's misogynist, this and that, and there are literally question marks on Donald Trump's character. But other than that, there are people like who are saying that okay, Donald Trump can be the savior that they were looking for. So let's watch this
video.
Yesterday, Donald Trump was declared the victor of the 2024 presidential election. While the result in and of itself wasn't a massive shock, polls before the election basically gave him a 50% chance of winning, and he was the slight favourite with the bookies. The magnitude of Trump's victory has taken almost everyone by surprise.
Yes.
Not only did he win a pretty overwhelming victory in the Electoral College, but he also looks set to win the popular vote too. The first Republican candidate to do so since George Bush in 2004.
Wow.
And Republicans look like they might also win a governing trifecta. So in this video, we're going to try and explain not just why Trump won, but why he won by such a large margin.
That's a big thing, like Senate, House,
Before we
everywhere.
start, so let's get straight into it. Well, there are obviously loads of reasons for Trump's victory. As we see it, the two biggest reasons might be his massive overperformance with minorities and the economy. Let's start with
minorities
Trump's
voted for
overperformance
Trump?
with minorities. In short, while we don't have the full results just yet, there's a fair bit of provisional evidence inferred by looking at the districts where Trump performed well and then comparing that to their ethnic mix, that Trump's victory was driven by a remarkable performance among minority voters who have traditionally broken for the Democrats.
Wow.
Now, this wasn't a total surprise. While Harris improved on Biden's numbers, Trump has been making gains in the polls with minorities, especially Hispanic and Arab Americans.
Arab
However,
American.
the magnitude of Trump's success has come as a bit of a surprise. According to NBC, for instance, in Wisconsin, Trump won 20% of the black vote, compared to just 8% in 2020.
Oh, he won more
And in
votes.
Pennsylvania, Trump won 40% of the Hispanic vote, up from an already unprecedented 30% in 2020. All in all, NBC is currently predicting that Trump will win a third of all minority voters across the US.
One
Which
third.
would basically be the best performance for a Republican, well, ever. For context,
Ever.
according to pre-election polls, Republicans haven't won more than 25% of the non-white vote since 1964. So why is this? Well, we've actually done an entire video on this before, but the TLDR is that while different ethnic groups have their own specific reasons, Arab Americans, for instance, generally don't approve of Biden's Gaza policy, while young black voters don't have the same loyalty to the Democrats as their older peers. The overarching reason seems to be that minorities generally have more socially conservative views than their voting pattern would suggest, and much more socially conservative views than their white progressive peers. Now, this is a relatively new phenomenon as well. In the 2000s, for instance, Democrats used to have pretty similar views on, say, immigration. But white
immigration.
Democrats, and the Democratic Party as a whole, have become increasingly pro-immigration over the past decade or so, while non-white voters have broadly stayed the same, creating an ideological gap between the party
There's
and
a
its
big
minority
difference.
base. Similarly, white Democrats increasingly identify as progressives, while non-white voters generally identify as
Conservative.
moderates, as they always have done. Non-white voters are also significantly less likely than white progressives to agree with left-coded statements like racism is built into American society, or they're more likely to agree with right-coded statements like the government should increase border security and enforcement, and America is the greatest country in the world. Unsurprisingly then, as this ideological gap has widened, fewer and fewer non-white voters identify as Democrats, and more of them have apparently shifted towards the Republicans.
Even Indians, I think so.
According to John Byrne Murdoch of the Financial Times, this shift has been accelerated by the decline of a taboo among minorities against voting Republican, which has allowed conservative minorities, who previously voted Democrat despite holding socially conservative views, to match their vote choice to their ideology. But it's not just about the minority vote. Let's move on to the second big reason that Trump won, the economy, which
that
according
is
to
the main
CNN's
reason,
exit
I think
polls,
so.
was the second most important issue to voters at this election, and presumably the most important issue for Trump voters, assuming that it was mostly Harris voters citing democracy as the most important reason. In short, one of the big questions at this election was whether or not voters would give Biden credit for his economic record, which, at least judging by the macro numbers, has been pretty incredible by international standards. That's because America actually suffered a smaller inflationary spike than peer economies during 2022 and 2023. American
So was it
GDP growth has
overhyped?
been way better than basically every other large economy. And the Federal Reserve apparently achieved a so-called soft landing, successfully fiddling the interest rates to bring down inflation without triggering a recession. Biden's industrial policies, including the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act, are also generally considered to be successes, although the number of jobs created has been somewhat underwhelming. Nonetheless, the headline story here is the American economy is doing pretty great by international standards, and us Europeans would kill for even a fraction of America's GDP or productivity growth. However, despite this, for the past few months, polls have reliably found that Americans aren't happy with Biden or Harris's economic record, largely because voters just don't like inflation. Biden and Harris hope that if inflation fell, Democrats could draw attention to America's overperformance by international standards. Then voters would give Biden and Harris the credit that Democrats feel they deserve. But this just hasn't happened. Voters still don't approve of Biden and Harris's handling of the economy, and generally feel better about Trump's economy in his first term. Now, in a sense, this is just a continuation of a global trend. Basically, any government that was in power during the 2022-23 inflationary episode has struggled in the polls, and many have been voted out of office in recent elections. And this seems to be because the only thing that voters really care about is inflation, especially what Bloomberg columnist John Authers calls anti-core inflation. In other words, voters care most about food and fuel inflation because it's what they notice in
Regular
their day-to-day
thing
lives.
to spend,
And that's gone up drastically, not just in the US, but in the world more generally. This makes them unlike economists and central bankers who look at so-called core inflation, which strips out volatile items like food and fuel to evaluate the risks of a wage price spiral. However, Biden's woes here have been exacerbated by an America-specific phenomenon: media polarization. In short, because Democrats and Republicans have almost completely different media diets, their perceptions of the economy are radically different. As you can see by these graphs, both sides generally think that the economy is doing pretty well when their preferred party is in office, and vice versa. This makes America quite unlike other countries, where voters across the political aisle generally agree on the state of the economy. In Germany, for instance, while AfD voters are generally more pessimistic about the economy, perceptions of the economy generally move in tandem across voter groups. The point we're making here is that even without the inflationary crisis of recent years, there's reason to think that Biden and Harris would have struggled to convince Republicans that the economy was doing well, whatever the facts on the ground.
Because of the media on their
side. But despite Trump's pretty quick victory, there's still much more to follow along with in this election cycle, with the drama of the US election far from over. And when it comes to absorbing all of that news...
So this was a detailed report into why Trump won, and the thing is, like, because we saw the Trump was very good at persuading people, like how he did good in everything and how he was very good in 2016 to 2020 and how this time was very bad. Also, we saw that economics was a lot of big thing, but when we see here, then all of the developed world were not doing that good and America was doing much better than all the other worlds. So then why was it such a big issue? I think so the problem lied where Democrats were not able to portray their message, or also I think so that the people just hated the way they dealt with everything.
Yeah, also what I thought about, they have just compared, their country, in like previous years, like when Trump was there. So I think Trump has become like a new hope for people. I would say not totally, but they might think that, okay, that might, I think the main issue is immigrants and inflation only, because what we are hearing since now, it's all about mostly in inflation, because people do judge the government on the basis of, the regular thing, because they judge even of the roads or the prices of the, groceries and everything. So I think Trump has become hope for people.
Actually, so what do you guys think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share and
subscribe.
Bye.